All right, you guys are in for a treat today. We're going to make podcast history. First of all, this is the first sort of co-podcast that I'm aware of. So we're completely innovating in the podcast front. But also for those of you who follow Dave Asprey on Instagram and podcast and Dan Buettner on Instagram and podcast, yeah, you probably know we're kind of at opposite ends of the how to live to 100 spectrum. And we're friends.
Just 100? That's the...
Okay, 200, Dave. And so we're going to be interviewing each other. In some cases, we're going to find a middle, but in other cases, we're going to give you two opposite things to think about when it comes to living to 100. And I will say, you're much taller than I thought you were, 6'4", and you're in great shape. So whatever you're doing is obviously working.
Oh,
and you're happy and successful. And for my audience, why don't you give a little background on how you got to be this longevity influencer?
Sure. Back in my teenage years, when I was 14, I was diagnosed with arthritis. And I'd been on antibiotics for only 15 years by the time I was 20 for sinus infections and strep throat. Had 3 knee surgeries for the arthritis, got fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, toxic mold poisoning, metal poisoning, high risk of stroke and heart attack before I was 30. And I went to the doctor. I went to the gym 90 minutes a day, 6 days a week. And I would eat this like semi-vegetarian, wasn't fully vegetarian, but low-calorie diet when I was exercising heavily every day. And I never lost a pound. And I was just so frustrated, thinking, maybe I can eat even less. Maybe I can work out for 92 minutes. And I just said, I'm doing it, and it's not working. So I'm going to be the computer hacker that I am, and I'm going to work on hacking this system. And I started doing things that were counterintuitive. So I followed all the things that were supposed to work, and when they just didn't, and my gut was wrecked all the time, and I just felt like crap. So I started hanging out with people 3 times my age at the first longevity nonprofit group in Palo Alto, California. And my friend Mike, who's on the board, would call me at 11:30 at night with more energy than I had, just bounding with energy. And I saw these guys are making themselves younger. And so the techniques that make old people younger make young people more powerful and stronger. So I recovered my health with the help of my elders. And I carried that forward to start the biohacking movement after a 3-month trip to Nepal and Tibet to learn meditation from the masters. And after a lot of work with neuroscience and reprogramming my biology as my hobby while I worked for an antivirus software company. And I wrote a blog post, and I started just talking about this body of knowledge that was not about longevity. It was about upgrading ourselves. So I fixed my health, and it cost hundreds of thousands of dollars it shouldn't have cost. But then I said, all right, how do we become even more vibrant than we think is possible because we've never experienced it? And the only reason I knew I could do this was because my friend Mike, who was 88, was kicking my ass.
Dave, what's your superpower? What are you best at?
My superpower is probably having had autism in the past.
Is that right?
Yeah. I had Asperger syndrome, which is what we called it then. And it runs in my family.
Did it go away?
Well, yeah, with a lot of work. It is reversible, even as an adult for most people. So what that did, when you're on the spectrum, if something happens, and there's lots of things that can cause neuroinflammation as a kid, but your brain doesn't have enough mitochondrial energy, and all the signals coming in are staticky. So now your poor brain is trying to figure out what's a word, what facial expression matters, what is this input from the tag in your shirt? But because it's spiky and you don't have enough energy anyway, the brain becomes hyper efficient, but it throws away a lot of useful information. So then as an adult, when I restored the power to my mitochondria, and then I got the toxins out of my nervous system, I had to reprogram how my eyes move, how I hear, how my tongue moves, my physical movement. So what remains from that is that my operating system in the brain was set up for hyper efficiency and seeing connections between things. And I think that's really my superpower, is that sometimes I pull from very different fields and synthesize something. And my goal is I only write a book if I can say things that haven't been said before. because otherwise I can just have you on to talk about your research. Why would I need to write it again,
Remind our audiences your most current book and the book you're most proud of.
My most recent book is called Heavily Meditated. And this is a book about all the things that either accelerate or work better than meditation to enter specific altered states. And the most precious one is forgiveness.
Oh, wow.
And it's easy to...
The biohacker talking about forgiveness. Now,
it's the most important thing. And it's easy to say that because there's, forgive them, they know not what they do. That's kind of been written before. Yeah. For the last 10 years...
Their fault, not mine.
Yeah. I've run a neuroscience company called 40 Years of Zen, where we bring CEOs and executives and professional athletes and people through a 5-day intense neurofeedback program where we're measuring their brainwaves. And I'm teaching specific meditation techniques so I can prove that they work. And at the end of 5 days of 40 Years of Zen, you have the same brainwaves of someone who's done daily meditation practice for 20, 30, 40 years. And I've spent 6 months of my life hooked up to a computer rewiring my brain. And what you learn is that no matter how successful someone is, everyone has that thing that gets under their skin. And I wrote Heavily Meditated because if you can be triggered, it means you're carrying a loaded gun and someone else's finger is on your trigger. And no one wants to be that way. I've yelled at my kids. I've yelled at, people I love, not intentionally. Well, what happened? Well, it was ultimately me. So how do I reset that instead of spending all my energy trying to manage it? So that's what that book's about, but it's based on 10 years of data.
So Saturday Night Live just parodied you, and they kind of poke fun of you in a way. But and how did you feel about that? Were you angry or happy?
No, I danced a jig. Like, are you kidding? What an honor, right? If Saturday Night Live thinks my work is worth being parodied, thanks, guys. So
it's part of the zeitgeist.
I sent it to all my friends.
Yeah. And how do you deal with trolls, people who disagree with you to the extent that they're mean?
Yeah, I wrote about this in Heavily Meditated. I've helped a lot of people who were kind of stuck with weight loss the way I was. So my social media was full of just gratitude. And I was on the Joe Rogan show a couple times. One of the companies that he was an owner of decided to launch a identical product. And that day, suddenly, I was a snake oil salesman and a bad man. And it rocked me. I was like, what is going on here? And so I hired a crisis PR firm. I'm like, I'm already got a successful business here. But one of the guys on my team, who was a convoy commander in Iraq, was like, Dave, you're way overreacting. He's just a podcaster. So I sat down and put the electrodes on.
So Joe went at you. Joe Rogan went at you
hard for 18 months. And it was entirely baseless. Like I helped him a lot with his ADHD stuff, and I helped his audience. Like I came in with good intentions.
Yeah.
And when I put the electrodes on and it did the reset process that's in the book, what happens is you think, what's the first time I felt this way? Like the feeling in your body. And this story from first grade that I'd completely forgotten about for 30 years popped in my head. I tattled on some other kid for something, and then the teacher says, little Johnny, did you do it? And he goes, I didn't do it, Dave did it. And I got sent to the principal's office.
Oh, that's wrong.
And this is injustice. But the reason I was so reactive to Joe was that I had a trauma from first grade where I got punished for something I didn't do. And I didn't consciously think that, but my body replayed that.
Yeah.
And once I became aware of that, reality is, every time Joe Rogan says, Dave Asprey's a bad man, I just sell more coffee. Like it wasn't actually harming me.
I was friends with George Plimpton, and he once said about PR, he said, PR is a lot like breath.
Oh.
Bad breath is better than no breath at all.
That's a great quote.
So, I mean, I love it that these people are sort of mean to you, and it flips around to be a big positive.
And with Joe, it was emotionally tough. I'm not going to lie, but I did my forgiveness work. And I've been to his comedy show in Austin, and I think he was a hero during the pandemic, and I don't have any issues with him. But what it did is it taught me really what's going on with trolls. The vast majority of trolls were bullied in elementary school or in middle school. They're stuck at that level of emotional development, and they're just playing that game. So I'm like, wait a minute. I have a 7th grade sense of humor. It's part of my longevity strategy. So when people troll me, I literally, and you can go to my social and see this, I just write, that's not what your mom said.
So great.
And that's for a troll. Now, if someone comes in and says, Dave, I really think canola oil might be healthy, and here's a study. What do you think? That's not a troll. That's like, yes, let's figure this out.
Yeah.
But there's a very different energy between someone who's just there to spread their darkness Right. So I want to make fun of darkness because darkness doesn't like humor.
I love it. And maybe you'll flip them and make them nicer people. So I think a lot of people come to you and come to me for advice on longevity. And I come from demography, which would suggest that the ceiling, the maximum average life expectancy for humans, the human machine is mid-90. And that going beyond that, you have to have won the genetic lottery, or it's going to require some intervention that we don't exactly know what it is yet. So if you like that clip, there's a lot more where that came from. So hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, ring the bell so you won't miss our new videos as they come out each week.